What's going on, guys? So, Chainsaw Man chapter 134. Denji seems to be going through an existential crisis, and I actually kind of sense this tonal shift that is happening within the Chainsaw Man manga right now, where it seems to be getting a lot darker than it was before. Now, it's gotten extremely dark in the past with part one, but I mean, like, primarily with part two. There has been dark moments along the way, but I feel like the actual overall tone of the manga is slowly starting to shift into something else, perhaps into the second act of part two, where I feel like the first act had everything set up. It had Asa as our protagonist. It had her kind of coming to terms with being connected to the War Devil. It had her seeing Chainsaw Man from her perspective and then slowly reintroducing Denji into the story. And now that we have both of them together, they've went through an experience together. Now I feel like the story is entering within its second act, which will probably build up to the climax, which will be the third act apocalypse, perhaps. But this chapter is a lot more simplistic. It's a lot more subdued, and it has to do with Denji by himself in his apartment with Nayuta, by himself with Nayuta. That doesn't make sense. But it seems like Denji has gone along with the ultimatum that Yoshida gave him, saying that don't be Chainsaw Man anymore, or else Nayuta will suffer a horrible fate and that they're going to kill her in some way. Now, they obviously have to have some intense firepower in order to do that, because Nayuta herself, the next control devil, kind of a very powerful character within her own right. But Yoshida does seem to have the resources that he needs in order to accomplish that. So there's that. And then you have Denji here, who is sort of accepting this fate at the time that it's happening, where he's saying, like, well, I just won't be Chainsaw Man anymore, and I'll just live this normal life. And it's Nayuta that's kind of like pushing him, saying, like, is that what you want? And he's saying, like, yeah, that's what I've always wanted. I've always wanted to have a normal life, which if you go back to the very beginning of Chainsaw Man, that is kind of like what Denji was looking for. Like, he found satisfaction in the most mundane, simple things that he never really got to have. Like, very, very simple. He's a man of simple pleasures, right? In many, many aspects of his personality, he's a man of simple pleasures, and that's kind of what he's wanted. And now he has the opportunity to do that, but is that what he actually wants? And I think there's a lot of interesting things happening here. First of all, it's kind of like, I wanted to say that Denji seems to have no control, no pun intended with Nayuta there, no control over his life, and never really has. And I think that's one of the issues with it, is because even if this is a normal life, quote unquote normal life, this is something that he's forced to have based upon the ultimatum that was given to him. Like, it's still not an aspect of his choice. And every single thing in his life, where everything that happened in part one, everything with Makima, and everything leading to this point, it's kind of like Denji has never really had any say in the things that actually happen in his life. Like, how much decision-making power has he actually had? And I feel like one of the only things that he actually did have that he could make decisions about was everything that happened in between part one and part two, where he was taking care of Nayuta, but then he was also being Chainsaw Man and just kind of doing this thing and kind of wanting to be admired and all that. And like, just kind of, a lot of it could have been lashing out because of how much he lost, since part one. But then I think another part of it too is just the fact that Denji was finally able to make decisions on his own and finally able to do the things that he wanted to do, while at the same time, he does have the responsibility of taking care of Nayuta. So there's a little bit of a balance there. But ultimately, it was this brief little moment in time where Denji could just kind of be Denji. And now he's sort of back to following the rule of somebody else and obeying somebody else. I also think there's that aspect of, the not being able to be satisfied with the things that you have. Because Denji has always kind of known a world where everything was against him, or that he didn't have the things that he wanted, or that everything was like so far out of reach, right? So now that he actually might have something, might have this quote unquote normal life, it's sort of still like this sense of dissatisfaction. Like, there's still something I long for. There's still something I need. There's still something out there. So it's like, it's one of those moments where every time you get something, you are just constantly like predisposed to be dissatisfied with it, and there's something else, right? And even further than that are the actual, like, the crux of what happens in this chapter, where Denji's watching the TV, and there's still all the argument over whether Chainsaw Man is good for the world, bad for the world. Most people seem to not like him at this point, but then you have the Chainsaw Man Church, which is being built up for some malicious intent that, like, I still haven't quite figured out what their true intents are. But you have the reveal of the fake Sawman. Finally, we have the reveal of the fake Sawman, and we don't get to see his face. We don't get to see what character he is. I don't know if this is a character that's been introduced. I think it's a new character, but his face is shrouded in mystery at this point, but he's at least bringing himself up to the public, which coincides with the idea that get Denji to stop being Chainsaw Man, and then we will throw a different Chainsaw Man in the public eye to kind of shift people's perspective to this version. So there is some kind of overall giant mastermind plan of intent here happening with removing Denji from the equation until we need him, because Yoshida did say that, like, until we need you. And instead propagating this fake Sawman in front of everybody, and he's saying that he fights in order to rid the world of devils, and Denji's like, that's not what I fight for. Also, I love the scene where they say they're gonna get the Chainsaw Man to come on the TV, and Denji goes to his phone like, they're gonna get me, like he really thinks that they're gonna call him, and like he actually legitimately thinks that they're talking about him. And then they bring the fake Sawman on, and it kind of throws Denji's worldview out, because what does he have besides Chainsaw Man at this point, you know? And if everybody is going to be believed and everybody is going to be manipulated to believe that Chainsaw Man stands for these particular things, or that he represents this particular thing, and it's not anything that Denji is or wants. And so now everyone is going to, once again, view him a different way. Just how everybody kind of like viewed him as somebody to manipulate, or viewed him as somebody inferior. You know, now everyone, whatever happens with the fake Sawman situation, everyone is going to view Denji like that. So this man, this poor boy, you know, is just constantly living in a world where he either has to listen to everybody else, everyone else makes decisions for him, everyone else decides when he can and can't do something, and he just feels trapped. And I think that this chapter, also all taking place in his apartment, kind of adds to that, because we're just surrounded by these walls. Like, we're just trapped in this situation. And it's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like, does he try to fight back? And then, like, what about all the resources that Yoshida has? And he wants to protect Nayuta, because now he's raised her long enough that she kind of is like a younger sister, or I would say probably more like a sister than a daughter, but like just the same, taking care of her. So it's like, what does he do at this point? So he kind of breaks down. He actually like legitimately breaks down at the end of this chapter, and I kind of feel for him, man. And as much as we try to joke around and like make fun of Denji because he's like ridiculous and over the top and super perverted and everything, there's many times where you understand like why he is so like when he becomes so extroverted, like we understand why. It's just like the man just wants to be able to live his life and do something, and not have everybody else step in every step of the way and just change the narrative of his entire life, which is constantly what's happening. So I feel for the man. Now, it was a pretty short, simple chapter beyond that, but I think that it's incredibly important. It's probably incredibly important for the things that are going to influence all of Denji's decisions coming forward. And also, we're finally getting kind of like the tease. We're getting kind of like little raindrops of the reveal of the fake Sawman. Also, the thing that I didn't quite understand is that he says because of a dealing with the Justice Devil. And I remember like we saw the Chainsaw Man shadow before the Justice Devil was defeated. So I'm assuming this is not like the Justice Devil. Like, this is something else. But I didn't understand quite what he meant by with the Justice Devil. Like, there's something I missed with that. So if somebody could explain that, clear that up for me, let me know. But beyond that, this is a good chapter. I think it's an important chapter. It might have seemed simplistic, but I think that it's gonna have a lot of resonance moving forward. So let me know what you guys thought of it. Chapter 134. I enjoyed it. Leave all your thoughts, comments, and theories down below. As always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and a comment, because that will help it out in the algorithm, and it'll help the channel out. Really appreciate it. Other than that, guys, if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have channel memberships turned on, Patreon, merch store, and all the various social media links where you can follow me down below. Other than that, have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time.